This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another session of I Am Well Holistic Health and Wellness. Tonight, we're going to touch on our spiritual awareness and health. And I have a guest tonight who I've known a long time. His name is Mr. Terrence Knox. He's going to share his experience and knowledge about Kemetic spirituality. And Mr. Knox, just want you to know, if I mispronounce anything, let me know.
Okay.
He's going to share what led him to Kemeticism. He has previously followed Christianity and Islam. Mr. Knox was born in Newark, New Jersey during the height of the civil rights era. The energy of the struggle fueled his burning quest for understanding and knowledge about spirituality, culture, and history. And he even majored in similar subject matter in college. Mr. Knox is a passionate man committed to uplifting those around him. He resides in Lenape Hoking, New Jersey, and is currently a middle school teacher. Ms. Knox has a Bachelor of Arts in World History, Master of Elementary Education, Master of Special Education, and is currently a doctoral candidate with his dissertation pending. In this awareness session on spirituality, our intent is to share diverse concepts, knowledge, and philosophies and experiences. Our intent is not to diminish any particular belief or to convince anyone to change their belief. As anyone who's been to any of our sessions, whether it's Power Now, whether it's Health and Wellness, that's our intent, really to bring awareness to you for you to then either pursue additional knowledge and or make a change in your life. So tonight, I think we're going to have a really good conversation because of just the subject matter. So with all that being said, you ready to go, Mr. Knox?
I'm very ready. I'm ready.
Yes. Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing. I've known Mr. Knox since he was, I believe, 10 years old?
10. 10.
Yes. So he's like a brother from another mother, as they would say, and he's also a fraternity brother.
Right.
So here we go. You sci-fi.
That's right.
Uh, Terrence, I hope you don't mind me calling you Terrence or Terry, because that's how I know you.
It's fine. It's fine.
All right. So we're here to talk about Kemetic spirituality. Can you explain, we'll say to our audience, what the origin of that, practice or belief system now is, and a little bit about it?
Sure. Okay. Kemetic spirituality, the origin of it, basically goes back to the beginning. Okay. The beginning of time. Okay. And when we think of time as a construct, but we're talking about universal time here. Okay. Not the time on our watch. We're talking about universal time. So, according to the Kemetic Egyptian spirituality, creation story, it initiated in the universe, which was a vast inactive ocean, okay, called the Nun, N-U-N, right? And from the Nun, it contained all the laws of the universe, right? But from the Nun, the hidden one kind of self-created, and the hidden one is known as Amun, okay, A-M-U-N, okay? Amun pretty much created itself. We don't say him or her. We don't say masculine or feminine. We say it, okay? When Amun manifested, another manifestation came forth called Ray. It is spelled R-A, but it's pronounced Ray, okay? And that manifestation is what we see daily in the sky. We call it the sun, okay? The sun is where all life begins and all life ends. Okay? Nothing can live without the sun. And the sun causes things to live and causes things to die. Okay? The hidden one, he rose up and created himself out of his own consciousness, right? So the initial expression of Amen was, as I said, was the sun. Okay, and Amen activated the sun, and then the sun began to activate other living forms. Okay, so when we look at ourselves from a spiritual context, right, we have to see that our creation, we are 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. Now, where have we heard that before? 666. Okay, we've been told something else about 666, but we are 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. And that creates something or a substance called carbon 12. And the universe is full of it. And we are pretty much carbon 12. We are a form of it, or matter. Okay. And when we speak about matter itself, we talk about atom, ATUM, right? From Amun came atom, ATUM. That over time became atom scientifically, and then atom. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a connection to all the things that we were told coming up. Okay? And the word Amen itself, when we are in, or we were in our religious, the dogmatic doctrine or our religious upbringing, we were told to say Amen at the end of each prayer. So we're calling the universal God when we end our prayers. Okay? So the origins of Kemeticism, I'll give you a little bit more feedback. We call it Kemet. Why? Because it means the land of the blacks. Okay? It became Egypt when the Greeks came. The Greeks called it Aegyptos. Okay? Aegyptos eventually became the word Egypt. And Aegyptos, the etymology of that word is Greek, and it means the land of the blacks. Okay? So, there you pretty much have it, the origins of Kemetic spirituality.
How long have you been practicing medicine?
Well, I've been practicing Kemetic spirituality 13 years. And I will tell you how it came about, okay, if that's something that you're interested in.
Yes.
How I became to practice this, how I came to practice it. I was reading prior to studying, being a student of Kemet and Kemetic spirituality. I was Muslim, and prior to that, I was Christian. Okay, born into Christianity. Okay, and that's one thing about religion. You're born into it. You don't know when you come forth from your mother's womb. You don't know, so you're taught these things, right? Um, so this particular night, it was New Year's Eve, 13 years ago. I'm in my place, my little fiefdom in my basement. We like to call it a man cave, but it's more like a place for me to come and study. It's peaceful and quiet here. I come down here and I study. So I'm reading the Holy Quran as I always would do on New Year's Eve. All right. And as I'm reading this book, something clicked. And I was like, all these years, 40 years, I've been reading this from a subjective point of view. But as I'm reading through the surahs, and I don't mean to offend anyone, I don't, I'm just speaking. All right, as I'm reading through the surahs, every other verse, if you do this, you will reap the reward of heaven. If you do this, you will reap the hellfire. The next verse, if you do this, you will reap the reward of heaven. If you do this, you will go to hell. And I'm like, wait a minute. I said, if this is true, I'm doomed. You know, I kid you not. I don't mean to laugh. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm doomed because there's no perfect person, right?
Hmm.
There's no perfect individual. So, and if this is accurate, we're all doomed. And it was at that point that I began to look at religion in an objective way.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I began to look at,
Yeah, because
uh,
I want to just catch something, Terry, that you said earlier, and I'll let you finish, which I think is real important. I remember asking the general question, years ago. I said, I wonder how many people are practicing the same religion that their parents practice.
mm,
How many people actually went out looking for themselves, or did they just get further rooted into something
mhm,
that they were indoctrinated in? And there's
mm,
nothing against religion. It's just looking at how many people took the time to find you. It's like we get used to hand-me-downs,
mhm.
you know, that we
Right,
never go out to buy our own clothes.
right.
you know. So it's interesting that you bring up that point. And again, it's just finding, are you following something because that's what you're taught, that's what you're comfortable with?
And it's
And
and I concur. It's almost as if though um, it's a form of from a child's perspective, it's a form of subtle brainwashing.
Mhm.
You know, when you think about it. Um, Again, uh, I remember when I took off the chains of Christianity at 18 years old, and I had gone on to Ramapo College, and I was like, I'm going to take the Shahada, and I did. I took the Shahada and converted to Islam, and I came home. And G Knox was not trying to hear it, man. She was not. I came home for spring break, and she was like, and Ray, I'm talking about my mom. She's passed away a few months ago, and when Darren knows my mom, it was like his mom.
Mhm.
That's how close we were growing up, and we still are close. But what I'm saying to you is that my mom was not trying to hear it because she raised me as a Christian. Okay, and there was some struggle. I mean, and she was like, if you do this, you can't come back in my house. It was that deep. And
Mm.
when my mom, when she said something, man,
Yeah.
she meant it, man. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I'm conflicted though, because I'm like, at 18 years old, I could have been into a lot of things that weren't productive, that weren't positive. But I was seeking the path to God at 18. And it took some time, but my mom, she began to understand, you know what? He could be doing a lot of things that he shouldn't be doing, but he's not.
Mhm.
And she eventually came around. She did. Um, but I'm saying, as we go along this path called life, we're going to be met with different challenges. And
Mhm.
sometimes from the people who are closest to you when they don't understand. And that's to your point, you know, you inherited that religion from your parents. They inherited it from their parents.
Yes.
And, it's like it ripples down from
Mhm.
slavery, pretty much. And that's another thing. I saw Christianity as a religion that enslaved our people. And then as I studied, when I went to college, I studied, I began to realize that Islam was pretty much in the same way. It did the same thing. But again, I'm not here to attack anyone's religious beliefs because because I don't because I don't agree with you doesn't mean that I don't like you. You know
Right.
what I mean? And a lot of people, they get, caught up in, well, he's disagreeing with me, so he must not like me. No, it's not that. Because I don't agree, it doesn't mean I don't like you.
Right.
Because that's why I really don't like to talk about religion to people. Is I just don't. I don't. But we're talking about spirituality here. Okay, it's a difference.
Yes, it is. I just want to say my path was very similar to yours, meaning that I was born into a family that was basically Christian.
Hmm.
They weren't church going, at least my immediate parents were not.
Hmm.
My mother's family, they were a little more rooted. And then my great grandparents, they were heavy, like churchgoers. So
Right.
it started to water down. But then, as you know, growing up, when you hit, adolescent teenage years, Islam was huge. And
Especially in East Orange.
yes,
Especially in East Orange. Yeah.
and I had an older brother who had joined the Nation of Islam, and he was adamant about me and my other brothers,
Hmm.
joining. Well, me and my other older brother, my younger brother was, too young at the time. So that was my influence. And I
Right.
carried that all the way to college. And then
Hmm.
what hit for me was having this moment where I would get into debates, religious debates, where you're trying to poke
Right.
holes in other people's beliefs. And I don't know what it was just this moment where it just hit me like, this doesn't make
What are you
sense.
doing?
Yeah, it just, it didn't make sense. And that's when, for me, I dropped, the, religious dogma and
Hmm.
kind of just went on a quest for myself to try to find,
Right.
again, an understanding of what this all meant. And I'm still on that journey, many years later. I did learn one thing, like I said, uh, I believe that your path is personal. It's not for me to say my path is right. If
Right.
it's right for me, then I make it work. But
Hmm.
I think we all, have our path. And uh, I will say I have encountered people when I would tell them that I'm spiritual, they came back, oh, I hate that word. And I found it's really a form of ignorance because
Right.
religion is a path to spirituality. It's not the other way around.
Hmm.
I think people need to understand whatever your religious beliefs are, it's to bring you to a point of being a spiritual being because that's what
Right.
we are.
A
You know,
divine being. Right.
yes, a
Exactly.
divine being. Uh, uh,
Mhm.
you know, so and I've had my say ups and downs, and my I won't say ups and downs. I've had little roadblocks where you become stagnant because you're not in the space with other people where you can share, you know, uh, your ideas or your thoughts or your beliefs. So it's interesting. It hasn't been a linear path. It hasn't been a clear path, but it's been a constant path for
Constant path. Right.
me.
I get it. And I can definitely relate to that. And it's interesting when we look at that word religion, right? I'm big into looking at
Etymology.
the etymology of the word,
Yep.
right? That's me. That's what I do. I teach my students that, man. That's how I teach vocabulary. I make them go and find the etymology of the word, where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's a different way of teaching vocabulary. It's my way of doing it. I don't know if anybody else is doing it. Maybe they are, but that's the way I teach it. Where did that word come from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the word religion, it's Latin.
Mm-hmm.
It's Latin, and it's 17th century Latin. Okay, so it's relatively a new construct on the timeline, right, of
Mm-hmm.
humanity. So when you think about that word religion, it comes from the Latin word religare,
Yes, it does.
which means to control or restrict.
Mm-hmm. Or to
Okay,
reconnect.
yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense, man, because you know, I remember as a youngster going into the church and on Sunday, and they pass the collection plate around, and they're watching you to make sure you put something in it. You know, like the elders in the church, they're looking to make sure you put something in there, And I'm like, even that made me feel somewhat uncomfortable. It did as a kid. It made me feel uncomfortable. And at the end of the day, I guess it was the evolution. My personal evolution, right? And people say, well, creation is different from evolution. No, they're one and the same. They're connected. They're intertwined.
Mhm.
They're intertwined. It was, oh, well, it was the Big Bang Theory. Yeah, okay. Creation and evolution were there.
Yeah,
They were there. So,
it's funny. I just saw a post on that recently, a debate,
hmm
about that. And for me, personally, I think evolution is just creation manifesting itself.
yep,
You know?
yep, yep. That's exactly what it is. The noon at the noon, Amun, boom. Creation, evolution.
Yep. Mhm. Uh, well, you pretty much answered my next couple of questions, but I want to get this one in there. And again, Ray, if you have any questions, I hope you're still there. Feel free to jump in. Uh, when you look back at your experience in other religions, looking at that text, and you kind of touched on this when you were reading the Quran on New Year's Eve. Uh, do you think those texts are literal, allegorical, combination of both? I'm
Um,
asking you as a student of those particular religions.
I would say, from my perspective, it's allegory.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, it's a lot of parables and things like that, man. And you got to figure out, what they're saying, okay, or what's being said, or or what tenses is being said in. Um, and when you have that, uh, there's manipulation present, okay, and manipulation from the pastor. Uh, your interpretation may be one thing, or the imam, your interpretation may be one thing, and they will come and say, well, no, 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 no. It goes against the grain. That's not what this means. It means this, almost in a forceful way. And I've
Mhm.
had that happen to me in those houses of worship. You know, well, you're not to question. That's what I was told, and I'm like,
That's common.
yeah, I'm not to question, but um, I've been told and taught to think critically my whole life.
Mhm.
So why can't I do it in this arena?
Mhm.
Even in Kemeticism, there are certain things that I question. Okay, and the reason why is because so much of it has been lost.
Mhm.
You know, and it's almost like you go into your mother's house or your grandmother's house, and you have this family heirloom, this big expensive vase, right? And your clumsy behind comes in there and picks it up and drops it. And it comes and goes into 1,000 pieces, and you're sitting there and you're trying to piece this thing back together. That's Kemeticism, because
Mhm.
so much of it has been lost over time. The language
Yeah.
itself, I mean, the Medu Neter, which means the language of God. Okay, that's what it translates. Right? The language itself, it's left up to interpretation.
Mhm.
Okay, it's left up to interpretation, and you're seeing the symbols, and you have some people who are further along the path of teaching it, but will we ever know its purest form? Will we ever know?
Right. Uh,
And
and
that's
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, no, I was done. I was done.
Because I think that that's a challenge with all of these beliefs, is that the trueness. Because even like I said, say with Christianity, the more I've been on this path, I keep coming across text and information that gives a different meaning to a lot of the things that have been passed
Right.
down. Uh, and I always tell people, about the lost teachings of Jesus, where it's what is it? Tom. I can't believe I
The
can't remember the
Gospel
name
of
of it.
Barnabas. The
Well, actually,
Gospel of Barnabas.
Thomas is what I'm thinking about. Uh, but now I got to look up another one because you just mentioned one that I wasn't
Hmm.
familiar with. But you start coming across these things, and you begin to realize, whoa, what I last knew may not be the entire story.
Right.
And
I mean, when you look at the Bible itself, when you look at the King James version of the Bible, there were books removed from from that Bible. You look at the Orthodox Greek Bible, there were books removed from that.
Mhm.
And you say to yourself, okay, like the book of Enoch, right?
Mhm.
Uh, that book speaks of giants walking the earth. Okay, um, physical giants, like
Mhm.
30 feet tall human beings walking the earth. But why was that removed from the Bible? Why? Why did they remove it? Why aren't they exposing that information to the rest of humanity?
Right.
Yeah, because when the archaeologists are digging, they're finding them. They're finding the bones. They're finding them.
Yes. I just saw
You know.
something recently about that. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, and I think you posted something because I, going back a few months when there was this whole issue with Kyrie Irving,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and information started coming, available. And what I learned then was there was a tribe in, I believe, Ethiopia,
Hmm.
one part of Africa, and they mentioned they were still practicing the original Judaism.
Right.
Mhm. And they, at that point, they said there was 84 books in the Bible. Then I
Hmm.
saw something that you posted a couple of weeks ago,
Right.
and that's, my understanding, if I'm correct, it was like 204 or
There's a
208.
hundred and I want to say 140 something, 150 something
Yeah,
books.
okay.
Yes, so
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
So,
somewhere around there. But the thing is that again, um, you can't. That's the one thing. If you're doing things of that nature, if you're picking and choosing what you want the masses of the people to read, there's an element of control there. You know, and,
yes.
that
So,
concerns me.
so I, for me, I think it's really important for whenever you choose a belief system is not only to study the belief, but also to study the history
Right.
of the belief.
Right.
Like coming out of a technology data, we used to have something called meta, which everyone's familiar with that term now.
Right
Yeah,
now
for
because
different reasons.
of social
Meta
media. Right.
was like data about the data. Mhm.
Hmm.
And it's the same thing. You know what? No matter what you're studying, take time to study the history of
Hmm.
how that came to be. And for example, like I said, uh, I think I may have answered your post that, say with the Bible, said you need to understand the Constantine, Emperor Constantine and his
Right. Right.
influence,
The
uh,
Council of Nicaea.
council, yes,
Right.
you know, to really begin to understand. And you should always, as you say, move from a subjective to objective point of view to say,
Hmm.
oh, why did they do this? What
Right.
am I missing? Mhm.
What was it to gain, right, from
Yes.
them doing this, and
Mhm.
why did they do it?
Yeah.
The one thing I was always taught, and it's interesting. Like I shared some books with you um, when we were talking prior to the session, and one of the things that I was taught by Dr. Joseph Ben Jochannan was that to question everything.
Hmm.
And it's interesting. Like I had the honor to be on the radio with this guy, man. back in 1988. Okay.
Wow.
We were on the Kate Thompson show. Um, and Dr. Ben was actually leaving that night after the show, WLIB. He was
Okay.
leaving that night to actually go to Kemet. He was taking a group to Kemet to tour. And
Wow.
I was 24, man, and I was sitting there with him and all of that energy, man, in that radio station, man. It was an amazing feeling. He is now one of our ancestors, okay, but he left a legacy for us, a fundamental blueprint for us to follow, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, he one thing he would always say is like, yes, I'm heavily into African spirituality, but I don't care what you Muslims say, I'm gonna eat me a pork chop. He's just he would crack me up. There was no shame to his game, brother. He was, I don't care what you Muslims say, I'm gonna eat me a pork chop. He would say that, but each their own. You know what I mean? So, but just like I said, being in his presence, and also I had the privilege of having Gil Noble as a professor at Ramapo.
Wow. Okay.
So
I heard
yeah,
him
man. I
one
mean,
time.
it was some heavy thinkers. Dr. Jeffries, another one.
Yep.
You know, I was surrounded by some serious brothers, man, at Ramapo College. Yep.
Wow. Yeah. I had the pleasure of actually hearing both of them speak uh, at two different events.
Hmm.
Mhm. So let me ask you, Terry, what are your thoughts at this point in your life? If you could narrow it down to say one or two sentences, how would you distinguish religion versus spirituality?
Um, I would say that religion uh, is man's construct. Spirituality is the Creator's construct.
Okay.
Just that simple.
All right. I like that. When I'm asked that question, I say on the surface or at its base level, religion tends to divide us.
Hmm.
Spirituality tends to bring us together
Bring us together.
because it's a concept of one at the end.
Hmm.
It's about being
Hmm.
connected.
Yep.
Uh, you know, are you familiar with the Kemetic Orthodoxy, which was started around actually 1988?
Yes, there are several temples springing up throughout the country. There's one here in New Jersey, actually, the
Okay.
Temple of Anu. The brother who is the head of that temple, his name is Ra Sanku Kepper. He's a personal friend of mine. Um, he is deep, deep, man. He's deep with it, brother. I'm just scratching the surface, man. Only
Okay.
13 years in, and like the two of us, he also came from Christianity to Islam, and he's here.
Okay.
And to tell you a little bit about his story, his mother was a Jehovah Witness. And when he became Muslim, his mother threw him out of the house. My mom threatened
Wow.
to throw me out. She threw him out. You know, she put him out. But he pretty much how can I say it? He understood it, and he understood that his path was different from his mom's. She never understood it. She's never embraced him since then. And
Wow.
I'm 59. Sanku is, I want to say, 52. And from the time he was 18, his mother and their relationship has been estranged because of the path he chose.
Which is an example of the separation.
Right, exactly. What you just alluding to what you just said.
Yes.
Yep. Hmm. So
Yep.
at the end of the day, man, yeah, I would say religion is man's construct, and spirituality is the Creator's construct.
Yes. Mm-mm.
Hmm.
Beautifully stated. The Kemetic orthodoxy, is it closely tied to the original Kemetic belief system or belief?
I would say it is a revitalization of it.
Okay.
Okay, because what once was still is.
Okay.
Okay, and from a spiritual point of view, man can do whatever to try to block, to try to distract. Okay, and we see that going on today in this society. Everything is a big distraction for us, but what once was remains and still is. It is for us to gravitate back towards it and revitalize it. So that's what you're seeing. Okay, a revitalization, a rebirth. Okay, that's what you're seeing. And as far as it getting back to its purest form, that is something that probably will never occur because of what was lost.
Okay.
You know, but I think that all of the Kemetic Orthodox temples are on the right path.
Okay.
Mhm. Would you
Good.
mind if we took a 5 minute break? I have to go check
Oh,
something.
okay. All
Can you
right, we'll
pause?
take a
I'll be right
5 minute
back
break.
in.
All
Okay,
right.
be right back.
Okay. We will take this time to pause, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ray, you still with us?
Hey there. Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Just checking. I'm
Taking
about to finish.
notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and actually, the next few questions are related to the Hermetic principles. Uh,
hmm
so, let's see what kind of knowledge you can pull out of Terry.
I'm interested in hearing what his thoughts are on those Hermetic principles and what he believes are our capabilities
Hmm.
as divine beings, essentially, which is what I'm starting to pick up from a lot of these different things that we're reading into.
Yes.
That.
Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, feel free to again ask the question if my question doesn't trigger the answer that you want. Now, feel free
Sure thing.
to ask. Okay, hold on. Let me. Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had to go let my dog outside, man. She's a
Okay.
yeah, she's a 95 pound German Shepherd, man, and she gets a little impatient at times, man. She's very well trained, but she knows when it's time for her to go outside. you know.
Okay. All right. We're gonna kind of, I won't say switch up, but we're gonna
Okay.
slightly alter the path of our discussion here. Yeah. To our understanding, Kemeticism is based on the Hermetic principles.
Hmm.
Mhm. Uh, and the Hermetic principles are based on the Kabbalion. Uh,
Right.
mhm. Are you also familiar with the teachings from the Emerald Tablet?
Yes. Toth.
Okay.
Yes. 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 It is actually stated that those tablets go back approximately 36,000 years. Okay. But here's the issue I have with that. I'm not disputing that. That's we don't want to, because people believe certain things, and I believe certain things. But when you talk about 36,000 years, I mean the Harrow Amaket or the Sphinx is older than that.
Mm.
Okay, the Pernetra or the pyramids are older than that. So a lot of times you find text, written text, or where it tries to pull the beginning out of Al-Kebulan or Africa and place it somewhere else. Okay, and we have to understand and question who's writing these texts. Do you realize that Egypt, as we now call it, is the only country where they have people who study it, Egyptologists?
Mhm.
And you have to ask yourself, well, why is that? So yes, I'm not disputing those tablets. I'm not, but the timing, the timeline. You have civilizations older than that. You have Sumer, okay, what the Greeks call Mesopotamia.
Mhm.
It's ancient Sumer, okay. Black-skinned people, the Sumerians, black-skinned people who uh, interacted with extraterrestrials.
All right,
Stop.
you're gonna trigger. Oh, I want you to know you're gonna trigger something in Ray. All right,
Okay.
all right. This is Ray's space.
I got you.
All right. All right.
But so
Go
he
ahead.
he 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 understands that extraterrestrial thing, the
Yes.
Anunnaki. Yeah, man. Hey, brother. Hey, man. We understand each other, man.
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, the Sumerians, the Greeks called it Mesopotamia, just like they renamed Kemet, right? They renamed that. And you have to ask yourself too, how is it that a civilization that came behind all of these civilizations gets to change the name and name them? I mean, think
Mhm.
about that. Um, we belong to a fraternal Greek organization, right? All of that stuff came out of Kemet.
Mhm.
The fraternities, the masonry, all of that is Kemetic. All of it. Okay? So when you start talking about Greek letter organizations, those letters aren't even Greek. They're Phoenician letters. Phoenicia was Africa. And when you start talking about Greek philosophy, they all studied in Kemet.
Mhm.
All of them. So you gotta say to that Greek philosophy, George James wrote a book, Stolen Legacy. Dr. George James, Stolen Legacy. And shortly after publishing that book, he was killed.
Oh, I'm gonna say something again. You're going to touch on Ray. Ray is very much connected to the people who just mysteriously died.
He just mysteriously died. Here's his book right here. Here it is right here. Stolen Legacy.
Mhm.
Okay. And shortly after writing this book, he was gone, man.
Mhm.
Like you said, mysteriously. And so again, if you go through the trouble of trying to hide all of this information, what's that telling you?
Yes. Now we're on the subject of hiding, and um, what, like in our discussions, like Ray and I, we're in this space where we're looking at all of the things that we're hidden about our innate abilities as humans,
Hmm.
things that have been suppressed, some probably intentional. Like again, if we talk about things like the pineal gland
Right.
and how
Right.
that the gateway to the divine and why how it's been calcified and so forth and and so on. But we're in that. that space, and now we are hearing things from, say, let's say scientists, and they
Hmm.
begin asking similar questions. Why was this, you know, not made public? You know, so while we're in that space, I just want to make one more connection. And Ray, again, feel free to ask your question. But you know, are you familiar with the Rosicrucians?
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
where they say that they receive divine information from an ancient source.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, um, that's studying, bro. That's reading books.
Uh, because one, yeah, yeah,
I'm not trying to make light of it, but it's studying and reading books, hidden books, mind you, by the way.
yes,
Right, hidden
uh,
information.
mhm. Which
Um,
it sparks another. We talk about the meaning of words and how things get twisted. Is we hear the word occult
mhm.
and we automatically think that that's some
It's
kind of
bad.
yes, but all it means is again hidden knowledge.
Hmm.
you know.
Exactly.
Uh,
Hmm.
so
That's all
I,
it
I
means.
asked, hmm?
That's all it means.
Yes,
It's hidden
yeah.
knowledge.
I asked about Rosicrucians, and my familiarity with them is basically that the core of the teachings was about connecting with the universe.
Hmm.
They believe this in a sense of oneness.
Right.
You know,
All of that is like. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, uh, which again is just based on some of these other
The Kabbalion.
yes, the combined yes, all
Right.
of them are based on
Hmm.
this concept of oneness.
Yep.
You know, um,
Kemetic spirituality. Same thing.
yes. Hmm. Uh,
So
uh, go ahead.
I was going to say, touch on the point where you said about the pineal gland. All right. The goal is to keep the masses of the people's pineal glands calcified.
Hmm.
That's why they have fluoride in your toothpaste.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, but there's something for that too. I got something for that called haritaki. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you're
What?
familiar with it, Ray.
No.
It's called haritaki. It is a an herb that grows in Tibet.
Hmm.
Okay, and this stuff is so powerful that it really, really just goes in and cleans the pineal gland, and it also makes your thoughts deeper than they are currently. Your dreams become so vivid, you remember them. I've been taking this stuff for about a year, and man, my thoughts are so clear. Um, and I feel like my I'm beginning to use parts of the brain that were not designed to be used. I kid you not. It's called
Okay.
haritaki.
Haratat. Now, where do
Hmm.
you get it from?
Actually, you can go to any type of Ayurvedic website, but I get it right from Amazon,
Okay.
and they ship it right to my door. Take 3 capsules right before bed, and
Huh.
it helps you sleep. Um, and your thoughts, the clarity of your thinking, man, just goes to another level.
Can you do me a favor? And this is for again people who look at the recording. How do you spell that?
Harataki, Harataki. Hmm.
Okay.
I'm
Ray, you
gonna
got a
send
question?
you the brand that I use via my text. Okay, I'm gonna send that to you
Okay.
now. You can
Mhm.
share it with Ray.
Ray, you want
Yep.
to jump in?
Sure, sure. Terrence,
Yes.
question. I was wondering what your thoughts were when it came to the Kabbalion and the concepts that are sort of broken down in the principles, specifically with the idea of like manifestation through affirmation and sort of our, abilities as divine beings, what that might look like, and what your thoughts were on that.
I would say this. Um, the Kabbalion and the principles really kind of guide us in an innate way to tap into our creativity, and that's something that this society and that this world tries to prevent. Okay, um, I believe that the Kabbalion itself is a great tool. Um, I mean, like I said, I told you guys earlier, when I read that book, I couldn't put it down. And there are times that I go back to it, just to refresh. But I think that it is the cornerstone of our individual creativity. And it also points out to us that the only way that we can find the God consciousness is in the deeper channels of our mind. Okay, so anything external, again, that refutes religion for me too. He said anything external, you know, can't take you where you need to go. You have a supercharger inside your brain that can take you exactly where you need to go when it comes to God consciousness. And the Kabbalion and those principles touch on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just jump in here, and this is for the audience to just kind of, mention what these principles are. There are 7 principles, to my understanding, that are mentioned in the Kabbalion. And number 1 is the all is mind, the
Mm-hmm.
universe is mental. Number 2 is the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration. Number 4 is the principle of polarity. Number 5, the principle of rhythm. Number 6, the principle of cause and effect. Number 7, the principle of gender. Mhm. So if anyone wants to know details, you can just Google it. You'll find plenty of information regarding
A
those
lot of
7
information.
principles. Yeah, which are really the basis for, understanding the universal laws and how to tap into them. Mhm. Great question.
Everything to me, my favorite one is vibration. Everything is vibration.
Yes,
Everything.
everything's
That's where
energy.
it all that's where it begins. Everything
Mhm.
is vibration, man. I mean, you talk about the pineal gland and the functions of that pineal gland. I mean, it's like, it takes one seed to fertilize the egg that created you. Okay? That seed actually, before you were conceived, it traveled up your spinal column
Sacred
into your
secretion.
brain, into your brain, and recorded the chromosomes from your father and all of his characteristics, not his blood type, because that's mitochondrial, that's mom. Okay, but that seed went into your brain and did a data dump into the seed, came back down into your father's loins and hit the bullseye. That became you.
Mhm. Again, for people, who may watch the recording, I recommend that you know what, Google sacred secretion and
Hmm.
understand how the fluid, it rises up your the cerebral spinal fluid, how it rises up your spinal column, and actually it cleanses your brain as well, and then it comes back down.
Yep.
And we could go on a whole nother conversation as to
Mhm.
what things sprouted from that area of the sacred secretion, in the parts of the body. But we'll leave that for you know, another
Another day,
conversation.
another time,
Yeah,
right?
but that's a very good point that you just raised there, Terry. Ray, you got another question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So, when we again take those principles, begin to understand the biological aspect of who we are as humans.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We
Hugh.
begin to,
Yep.
now,
Hugh. Humans.
yes,
Yep.
yes, we can tap in, we begin to tap into what I call our innate intelligence, which is the same intelligence that exists in nature. Because I've always asked people a question: a tree doesn't go to school to become a tree.
No, it doesn't. But
Yeah,
it grows up
it grows up, yes. Uh,
to the heavens.
yes. And it has a direct connection with the sun.
Hmm.
Mhm. Now, but there was no schooling there. It just knows it's being what it was
It knows what
designed
to
to
do.
be. Mhm. Now, we somehow have lost that as humans, that we don't really know who we are. And what I'm glad to see, and you sort of mentioned on this when I was asking you about the, Kemetic orthodoxy, uh, about coming back to what was, is what
Hmm.
is, and what is always would always
Hmm.
be. That you do
Right.
see a movement where people are slowly trying to find their way back to something. They're searching for meaning, and they realize that it's absent of our current existence.
Hmm.
I even drill it down to moving from knowledge mastery to self mastery.
Mm.
You know,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
we spent, and especially in our era, and probably all the way down to you, Ray. He's a few years younger than you, Terry, as you know,
Hmm.
like 20 years younger. Uh, Again, we were all taught to go to school to learn something so that we can make a living. It
Hmm.
was all about getting knowledge and skills. Well, a lot of people have found that left folks unfulfilled.
Right. Right.
So we're now searching, and especially after the last few years, with all the chaos, we're searching
Mm.
now. People are searching that just there has to be something more now. So I want to actually, that leads into a question for you. How has Kemeticism, assisted in elevating your state of consciousness or expanding your awareness? How's it helped you in that space?
It's been huge as far as elevating consciousness and awareness. And going back to my younger days, I was often quite volatile when matters of race surfaced, or discrimination, um, because I felt that someone was thinking that I was less than them. Okay, and one of the things that I've learned through this process, uh, as I move further down the path of Kemeticism, is that you cannot control what people do to you, but you sure can control how you respond to it, whether you think it's even worthy of a response.
Mhm.
Okay, because remember, Kemeticism teaches us to say Shem Imhotep or Iwi Hotep, which means I live in a state of undeniable peace.
Mm.
And whenever someone says something off the cuff, I look at them and my first reaction is to say, you know what, if I respond to this, then it's going to disrupt my peace. And I can't afford that.
Mhm.
Can't have that happen because then I become distracted. And then I am not who I am meant to be if I'm distracted.
Mhm. Yeah, we just have.
Like you said,
Okay.
and one more point before you go
Okay.
jump in, like you said, we're taught to go to school. We're taught to learn a certain thing or a specific thing, right? And that's called a formal education,
Mhm.
right? But it's the informal education what really makes us who we are,
Mhm.
okay? Because I would go as far as to say that I haven't been educated in the schoolhouses. I have a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees, and I've completed the coursework for my doctorate, and ain't none of that stuff African. None of it.
Mhm.
Okay? And none of it's African. So what I'm saying is that it's more of an indoctrination or a subjugation. Okay? Doing this, reading this, the Kemetic Holy Scriptures, Nuk al Neter, which translates, I am a divine being. This is education. Reading Baldwin, I am not your Negro. This is education. Okay? So when we are able to pick and choose the things we read, like this is what I'm exploring now. It says the hidden ancestral identity of the American Negro. Okay? Because we've been told that, oh, you're black. You're Negro, you're black, you're colored, you're African American. Those are all government corporate identifiers. Okay? It's not a race. It's not. And the way that this has been done is through what I call paper genocide, through the US Census. We went from indigenous people to Negro, to black, to colored. Divide. There's that division. Right?
Which is again very important when you talk about the education that we're all going through. And I want to connect that with something that Ray posted or shared with me. I don't remember, but he showed a school with children. It was actually around the same time that you posted you had posted something on Facebook, and I had responded because I shared with him the response about how we're being indoctrinated and how our creativity and our imagination
being taken away.
is being taken away. And that's on one level. And then what you just shared is even on another level, where you begin to you're further removed from learning about who you are. Because in all of that education that you just mentioned, there's nothing again about self-mastery.
Nope,
No,
not a thing, nothing.
nothing, we're
It's all theory.
All theory, and it's all based on really someone else's approval.
Opinion. Right.
And we've been indoctrinated to believe that that's necessary because why? It gets us into the system. And before we know it, we're locked in. So I actually encourage everyone to again focus on your imagination, your creativity, and again your self-mastery. So I'm glad that
That's
you
the
mentioned
genius. That's the genius gene that we all have. That's the genius gene. We all have one. All of genius has something.
And actually, something else that Ray shared, and this goes to something that I learned years ago. But he shared a young kid who basically could see. Yeah, he said he heard colors when he heard certain musical notes. And it was pretty deep because again, it's all energy. And if you begin to understand that if you take a sound and it vibrates at a high pitch where you can no longer hear it, you can then see it because it will produce a color. So you begin looking at all these little, I'm gonna say nuances, but all these little nuggets, and you start to connect them and you can have a better understanding that, yeah, there's definitely something more than what we've all been taught. And it's never really touched in any of our formal education.
I agree. I
think
see,
I would suggest people go on that quest.
And you're absolutely correct because what we are taught, or I'm a teacher. I'm in the schoolhouses and I see it, and these kids are being taught to do rather than to think. But not in my classroom because I'm like, no, man. But in other schools, you see it. They're taught to do rather than to think. And where did that exist prior? During slavery. on the plantation. Pick this up. Don't think about it. Just pick it up.
Yeah. And that's where, again, we get to see the mental, what they call the mental shackles. And most people, again, they never expand their awareness, so they think this is normal.
Right.
And
Because
like
that's
I said,
all they know.
yes, and they end up getting caught in the system, and they spend, the joke used to be, you spend 40 years to get a gold watch,
Mm-hmm.
And you really find out that you are disposable,
Right.
that they
Quick.
really don't care, but yes.
Quickly.
So now it's trying to convince people to really begin, which trying to do, the platforms that I have is to tap into your own innate ability. And as, the question that Ray mentioned was, some things we talk about is the ability to manifest, to tap into the universal laws of, again, vibration and attraction, and
Attraction.
really understand how they work. And again, we tell people now, I was like, this is no longer what you might consider woo-woo, stuff. Science is now proven that this is all real, because when you talk about energy and matter, well, they really say there really is no matter. It's just all energy at different frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, all of this that we see isn't really solid.
Right. Exactly. Because it changes. It will change. We're going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, transition, as you said earlier.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions before we end this discussion. If well, you kind of touched on this, but I just want to go back just for this recording. Is you're familiar with the term Christ consciousness or universal consciousness?
Yes.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about those terms?
Well, Christ consciousness is when people say that they're able to pretty much process things the way that Jesus would process things. Okay. I don't, like I said, I don't really have an opinion about that, so to speak. I like you mentioned earlier, what works for some people works for them. What works for others. And again, when you bark up that tree, you're opening up yourself to debate, pretty much. But I don't know that I could support that. I don't know if I could. I don't think I can support that ideology.
Okay.
But as far as universal consciousness, we are products of the universe. And our job in the universe is to aspire to universal consciousness, complete universal consciousness. It is why we were sent here. And once we achieve that, it encompasses all other things. Okay. People look at our makeup, at our physical makeup, and they look and they say, well, society speaks ill about black people, for lack of a better term, black people. But when we look at the universe, we are a reflection of that. That's why our hair grows up. Okay? And you remember the days when I had that big fro, brother. The hair grew up towards the heavens. It didn't flop down to the shoulders. I ain't talking about no folks, but I'm just saying what it is. The hair grows up because the energy is there. The hair is erect because the energy is pointing towards the energy. And the sun or ray is making the hair grow up.
I just want to go back about the term Christ consciousness. And most people, when they mention it, they always put the clarification that Christ consciousness has really nothing to do with Christianity.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, they said several people throughout history have had, Christ consciousness, and they use the term Christ consciousness because Christ happens to be something that most people are familiar with
Hmm.
who he was and what he represented. Uh, Sometimes they even again use the term as, it's a oneness, which is also considered what the universal consciousness is. It's really that that state of oneness,
Mm.
which very very few people have truly, I think, attained that. We've all been exposed to it,
Right.
but we have yet to get
To
there.
reach
And
it.
I think you're right. And I think what we're seeing now, again, over the last few years, is I always say there's, people talk about the division, the polarity in all the things happening out in society. But I'd say that there's another part too, which is the state of consciousness.
Mm.
You see people now who it's almost like you just watch them on the internet and they have no clue, they have no way of controlling their emotions, their thoughts. They are looking almost for a fight. Then you have
Right.
other people who are moving on and saying, I don't want to be bothered with that energy, you know, and taking steps to move themselves away from it. Uh, how long will it take for us as a overall society to elevate to the next level of consciousness? I have no idea. But you definitely see the separation. And what I think about, what came to mind when I first noticed this, where you might be a bit too young, but Terry, you remember the original Superman?
Yeah, I
Okay,
remember.
there was an episode where they had the mole people.
Right.
The mole
I had
people
forgot
lived,
all about that episode. I
yeah,
remember that,
yeah,
man.
they lived underground. You know, and I think it might have been the episode might have been based off something that was in the uh, the book, The Time Machine.
Mm.
Because again, I don't know if either one of you are familiar with that. They redid, the movie. Well, there was a movie and then they redid the movie about 20 years ago. But the same thing happened with so far in the future where you had two sets of people. You had people who lived above ground and people who lived
Low.
below ground. Uh, and I see it now as a metaphor for your state of consciousness.
Mm.
People with a high consciousness were above ground. Those with low consciousness was below ground. And they only came out at night.
Mm-hmm.
They usually came out at night and they raided. You
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, but I see that now, maybe not to that extent, which I have to wait and see. But I can clearly see the difference in people's state of consciousness, where again, some
I,
people are seeking something
I can
better.
relate.
Mhm.
Some people, they like you said, they want nothing to do with it. They are just moving along through this thing called life, not looking to grow.
Mhm.
And I think, but not I think, I know that it has a lot to do with conditioning, prior generational conditioning, um, where you find people who, I hear it all the time. Oh, there he is again. He's talking that stuff, and um, he's crazy, this, that, what have
Uh-huh.
you. And especially when I start talking about aliens, right?
Mhm.
But who in their right mind would think that that vast universe out there, that we're the only living beings in it?
I've always said that.
Come on, man.
I'm gonna say it'd be very egotistical to think
Yeah, exactly. To even
on
think
this
that.
small blue marble
Yeah.
that we reside on, that we'd be the only beings.
And it just, it's, come on. I mean, like, at the end of the day, you know, uh, it's all about exposure and your willingness to embrace new things, and also to criticize old things.
Mhm.
You know, if it doesn't work for you, then you know what? You know what it is, you understand what it is, but it doesn't work. Like,
Right.
for example, I like to wear Adidas shoes. People are like, oh well, Nike this and Jordan this. I'm like, dude, I like Adidas shoes. I just, you know, nothing against Jordan, but just I like
Just
Adidas.
what you like. Mhm.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Again, I think that's a small derivative of this sign of separation of one or the other. We see so often where people are so apt to do a comparison.
Hmm.
Who's better? Well,
Right.
why can't they just both be?
Why
Why
can't
can't
you
they
just
both be?
dance your dance and they
Right,
dance their dance? Who's better? You know?
right.
No.
Uh, that is, I think, part of the conditioning that we always have
Hmm.
to better put one thing against the other. We live in this.
And
Uh,
you're always going to be like this.
yes. Mhm.
You're always,
You
it
know,
is not. This is never going to happen.
mhm.
You're always going to be like this.
And I think people thrive on that. And that again goes back to that state of consciousness where you want to get to the point where you can just see again the oneness. It's not this versus that. It's the two together. They
Right.
both were great,
Hmm.
and accept that and enjoy it. Mhm. People spend time
And
debating.
appreciate the differences as a sense of in a sense of beauty. The
Yes.
differences.
Mhm.
Instead of saying, "Oh man," like I was at work today, and some of my students came up to me, and we had a teacher a few weeks ago make some disparaging comments to the kids, and she was like, "Oh, she's a young lady, Caucasian. Oh, you guys are never going to be anything, blah 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 blah, that type of stuff." So some of my students came up to me today and said, "Oh, Mr. Knox, she called you a boy." I was like, "Really?" I said, "Well, um, as long as I don't hear her say that, we don't have a problem." you know,
Right.
you know what I mean? I said, I don't deal in hearsay. You know what I mean? Like, oh well, she said what? I'm gonna go around there and tell her off. No, no, because if I do that, then she wins.
Mhm.
You know, and at the end of the day, I'm old enough to be her father. She's younger than Ray. I'm 59. She's 34. And what do I look like going around arguing with her over something that she allegedly said? Whether she said it or not really doesn't matter to me because I know who
Right.
I am.
That makes you think of the old question where people would ask if a tree falls in the forest and no one's
Make
there,
it sound.
does it make a sound? And the scientific answer says no, it does not. And it was like, why doesn't it? Because in order for a sound to occur, you have to have something to receive the sound.
Right,
If there's
exactly.
nothing there, because it's just vibration.
Vibration.
Vibration, So you think about it, she's just vibrating on her own frequency.
Yeah,
There's
and
no
I'm
sound,
on a whole nother level,
right?
man. you know,
As far as you're concerned, there's no vibration, there's no sound. So you
yeah.
keep it moving. Hmm?
Yeah, I'm on a whole nother level, man. Like you said, I'm not. Come on, I'm not entertaining that. I'm here to teach you guys and to, make sure that you guys are getting what you need. I'm not here to deal with that. It's not.
So for last question. Right?
Mhm.
Uh, you know, on Facebook, your Facebook handle is Sa Nu Netter.
Sahu Najet,
Sahu, yes, I'm
Najet.
sorry, Sahu. Yeah, Netter.
Yep. Hmm.
Can you explain that?
Sure.
I know what the last word means.
It's God, right?
Mhm.
Or nature, God, right? So
Yes, nature.
God
Yep.
is nature. God is nature. Nature, God.
Netter.
Right now, Sahu is the incorruptible soul.
Okay. Mhm.
Okay, that's what that means, and it is my Kemetic title. Okay, the incorruptible soul. Right. Hmm.
Uh, do you, outside of the social media platform, do you use that title in other places?
People call me. They call me Sa. Yeah.
So, okay. All right. Just wanted to
But you
know.
still can call me T. Because I mean, I'm not that. How could I say, man? That's that name that I have. That my birth name is my only connection to my mom.
Okay.
So I'm never going to frown upon someone calling me that because that's what she called me.
Right.
You know what I mean? She called me that, and I remember when she passed. After my mom's funeral, I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to let anybody call me Terry anymore because I was in my feelings, man. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then I said, you know what? It's what she called me.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I hear it, it brings me to a good place thinking about her.
Yeah.
So, like I said, people call me Sahu. And like, hey, what's good, man? You know, what's happening? But Terry still works, bro.
Okay. Yeah.
You
I
know,
had somebody the other day call me by my nickname, and then they call
Scoob.
themselves. Yeah.
I haven't heard that in ages, man. Oh man,
uh,
wow.
and then she cut us out, but she said, "Ooh, I'm sorry. Is that okay?" I said, "It's fine." I said, "Everybody
Hmm.
does that same thing." I said, I said
Yep,
it just lets me know how long I've known you. When somebody calls me that name,
exactly. And if you
I
can't,
don't have. Yeah.
and
I
if you
don't have a
can't,
problem with it.
if you can't respond to what your mom called you, come on,
Right.
man. That's
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
that's just crazy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yep. And I just like my mom, and she, would always say to me, she's like, up until she passed, man, she would always say, dude, you've taken things farther than I could have ever imagined you have taken them. And I learned some things about my mom. She was like, she had aspirations to become a school teacher. And she would tell me that all the time, I
Mhm.
wanted to be a school teacher. I didn't become a school teacher, but my son did, so that divine connection, man, I still have the divine connect line to my mom. She wakes me up every day at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Mm.
Clockwork, bro. I
Yep.
wake
Yeah.
up and she's at the forefront of my mind every day since she left here.
They say that that's the download period.
Mm-hmm.
At 3 a.m. in the morning, I believe
Yep.
3 to 5 a.m.
Yep.
Uh, so you're getting something from the other dimension. Mhm.
Yep. They
Uh,
come. They come. And people
mhm.
don't, oh, it's a ghost. I'm like, man, if you don't get out of here, you're a ghost. You
Yeah.
don't even realize it.
Yeah.
You're a
Yeah.
ghost.
Uh,
You're a spirit
yes.
housed in a human body. You're a spirit.
Your spirit. Absolutely. But yeah,
Yeah,
again, that scares people.
yeah, it
Uh,
does.
but again, spirit is just energy. That's all it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Yes, that's it. That's all it is, man.
Uh, Ray, you got anything before we close out?
Nah, I was just very good listening. I'm good as far as questions go.
Okay.
Ray, I appreciate, meeting you, man. I know if you're good with Darren, you're good with me, man. I mean, this guy, man, I'll tell you, he was always an example for me to follow. He was. He was 3 years older. I always looked up to him as a kid, and I always looked up. I said, his intellect, man. Like listening to him speak, and we would dialogue all the time. And I was there when some of the challenges he went through and how he stood tall, in spite of them. And it inspired me to do the same thing when I was faced with challenges. He's a big brother from another mother, as we like to say. And I don't say that lightly. I don't. So
Thank you for
he's
that. Yeah.
he's a great mentor, man. You hold on to him, brother. Get all you can from him.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, like I said, Ray is the only one from that era that still hangs around me. And
Hmm.
like I said, he 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 crashed my class. I was I remember going through the attendance, and he was the only one that wasn't on the list. And I said,
Oh,
and he just pointed and said, "Oh, I'm here." He came with a friend of his. He said, "I
okay,
just came to check it out."
okay. But you know what though? Again, he was supposed to be there in that
Yeah.
in that in that in that moment in that time. He was supposed to be there.
Uh,
You know,
and yeah, he
20 years later,
yep, still
he,
here. And
still
like
there.
I said, Ray has a great mind. Uh, when you talked about aliens, like I said, even though I believed in them, I think this is one area where Ray was definitely a step ahead of me because he was really into it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whereas I had just said, you know what, there has to be life out there somewhere. I don't know what it looks like. You know, I don't know if it looks like us, but it's definitely out there. And then,
But and I'm gonna leave you with this, okay? And Ray, I'm quite sure you probably, both of you guys probably, can connect to this. Now, if the so-called powers that be, disclose that they know that there's alien life, all religion would go out the window.
hmm, good
They
point.
would all go out the window.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Definitely.
That's why they hide it.
Now,
They
it's,
know. They know.
it's
This
interesting that
here.
you say
I
that.
tell people all the time. This here.
Yeah.
This is alien technology. Right
Mm.
here in my hand. I never
Getting
thought when I was a kid growing up that I'd have a phone in my pocket.
right. I mean, getting your own phone was a big step.
Exactly,
Huh?
right? Exactly. Getting a
Uh,
teen line
mhm.
and fight with my brother. Or who's going to use the phone, man? We fighting over
Right.
the phone, me and Kevin.
Uh, mhm. Yeah.
Yep.
But you raise a point, and I don't want to keep you guys too long, but it just so happens that that last point you made reminds me of the Catholic Church about last 2 years has made it okay to include the concept of aliens
Mm-hmm.
in their discussions and I guess in their preaching.
Because they know. They know.
Yes. Mhm.
They've
Uh,
been new.
yes. Mhm. You know,
And
and
also, one more caveat. In my studies, I've run across documents that say that Islam itself is a creation of the Roman Catholic Church.
wow, that's deep.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
we we
Yep.
definitely need to have a part 2 about that particular subject
Mm.
because I think that ties into also tapping into what our abilities are because there have been a lot of well I've come across a lot of content relating to how our DNA was restructured, again,
Mm-hmm.
how some of the things have been suppressed. I don't know if either one of you, I know I shared stuff with you, Ray, but Terry, I don't know if you're familiar with Billy Carson, Forbidden
Heard the
Knowledge.
name, but I'm not too familiar with them.
Yeah, he's on Instagram, but he's actually launching a TV, I think a TV channel called 4 4BK.TV. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're Instagram and you search for the number 4,
Okay.
forbidden, yeah, forbidden knowledge, I believe it is.
Okay.
Uh,
Forbidden knowledge. Okay.
yeah, you can find him. He just did a live stream from Egypt today.
Oh
He's
wow.
he's heavy into understanding extraterrestrial life and
Mm-hmm.
how it influenced us as human beings, but and all the the even biblical teaching. So and quantum
I'm gonna
physics.
check it out.
But yeah, very intelligent young man. So, but with that being said, again, I just want to thank you for making this app available. Terry
Anytime, man.
and Ray, thank you for joining once again, joining the discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. And to everyone, you can, I guess, if anyone's listening, they see this recording, they found it. But just so you know, the Our recordings are on I Am Ready. Again, letter I, letter M, Ready Network on YouTube. Mhm.
Okay.
All right. All right,
We
gentlemen.
definitely will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Ray,
Yep.
it's a pleasure meeting you.
Yep.
Same here, James.
You guys enjoy
You
the rest
guys
of
have
the
a good night. I will
night.
leave you with a greeting. Shem Hotep. I go in peace.
I go in peace as well.
Very good. Take care, guys.
Peace.
All right. All
Good
right.
talk.
Okay.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.